Welcome back, everyone, to Profluence Sports. Got Dave Checketts today, coming off big announcement. So, Dave, appreciate you hopping on and excited to dive into this one today.
Thank you, Andrew. Good to be with you.
Likewise. So I want to start here, and I always try to keep these different as well. I'm sure you've done some other podcasts or interviews around it, but you've been in sports for a large part of your career in and around it. I'm always like, what's kept you in it? Why do you love it? Like, what's the motivating drive to just keep staying in an industry for, a career?
Well, I probably grew up like a lot of other people. Just if I was not in a classroom, I was on the field someplace doing something. Just loved. I had an older brother and a younger brother, and we, after school until it got dark, we were competing, especially in basketball. Basketball was our number one sport. All three of us were really good players when we were young and played in school. And as we got older and bigger, those games got rougher and rougher. But that was my life. That's how I grew up. And I always thought when people would ask me what I was going to be when I grew up, I would tell them that I was going to own sporting goods stores. And I didn't just say one store. I said many stores.
Yeah.
And the reason I said that was because if my mom and dad wanted to occupy me in anything, they would take me to a sporting goods store. I love to swing the new bats, smell the new basketballs. I loved everything about the equipment for sports. I had in my bedroom at home, I had, a San Francisco 49er helmet. I just loved that, the colors, and loved watching the NFL. So that's what I thought my life was going to be. And I went to college. I did well in school. I graduated and went to business school. And when I got out of business school, I ended up going to a consulting firm in Boston called Bain & Company. And that was my first time on the East Coast. I'd grown up only in the West. But during my time at this consulting firm, one of their clients and them decided they wanted to try to buy the Boston Celtics.
That would have been a great deal if you look back in time at that one right there.
They wanted to buy it. And they didn't bid quite enough to win the bid, but I had done all of the work to get them ready for that, prepared. And so that brought me in touch with a 42-year-old New York lawyer named David Stern. And David became my mentor. For some reason, he saw something in me and we became dear friends. And I love him. I miss him every day. I joined with him basically to turn the league into something different. He became commissioner in '84. I was already with the Jazz then, which he had arranged for me to do. And ever since then, what I love about my job and my career choice is how it moves people, how it makes people feel better about living in the town they live in.
Yeah.
How when their teams win, they kind of can go on with life, and when they lose, they're just devastated. So it's something I've always loved and loved being a part of.
Yeah. And I asked just because people ask me all the time, like, you've been in sports your whole life, similar to you, younger brothers, played growing up basketball, same thing. And then you're in it now and it's like, I don't know, like I don't see myself leaving it. So I'm always just curious if people have been through like how you guys felt and saw it through. So anyway, encouraging to hear, but not to spin the wheels too fast right into it, but give us the rundown. Let's hear it from your voice, what you got going now. You've done a ton of cool transactions. Your family's done cool stuff, in the private equity space. Give us just a little background on that and then when it turned and it was like, hey, let's partner up and let's go do this thing. And why is the time now, right? You transact a lot of deals and now you're like, now let's have this vehicle set up to go run.
So I've invested in teams, just really my own money and partners' money. Bought the St. Louis Blues. We bought Real Salt Lake. An MLS team, an expansion team. We had a blast with both those teams, even during the 2008-9 financial crisis when everything was thrown up in the air. We somehow survived. And with Major League Soccer, we basically built a brand new stadium in Salt Lake City at the base of the mountains. And then we won the MLS Cup in 2009 beating David Beckham and the LA Galaxy in the finals. This team that was only 4 years old then. And we beat them, got this enormous silver cup, which meant a lot. But along the way, I also lost a lot of money because MLS is, they're still a ways from where they need to be in terms of television contracts and interest, even though attendance has been great at the stadiums, really great.
But you got 2026 coming, so
Yep.
World Cup, so I'm sure
That will
you're
help.
eagerly awaiting that.
That will help. But what really needs to happen there is, because I'm involved in the Premier League in England too. So there's a huge difference in the quality of play between those two leagues. And you're just going to have more money and spend more money on the right kind of talent to ever become a league that is compelling enough that Americans on Saturday mornings will turn to you instead of what they do now. They watch La Liga, they watch the Bundesliga, they watch Champions League. And that soccer, that football is stunning how good they are. Yeah. And so we're still a long way from there, even though we've been in business. MLS has been in business 30 years now. The league has gotten better. But as you know, we've kind of borrowed on the fame of players that established themselves elsewhere. And Messi, it was exciting that Messi came and did what he's done. The same with Beckham. But we need a culture of players who are in their prime, and we need a culture that allows the national U.S. team to be competitive on a world stage and to have all those guys that play for the U.S. national team in MLS. That's what needs to happen to really start making this compelling. And then there's the whole issue of the international soccer calendar and whether, MLS teams should play as part of that calendar. Now they're talking about changing it, but that means how do you play in Chicago in February? How do you play in Boston in December,
Yeah. I wouldn't want to, but I'm sure you can.
It's going to be tough, but if they do change to the international calendar, then they wouldn't be losing players in the middle of the season for national duty. It's just got a number of things that need to make some hard decisions there.
Yes.
But that's been fun anyway. So buying soccer, buying hockey, buying soccer in England. I bought a television production company called Gravity Media that does the U.S. Open tennis tournament and the Australian Open. And so I've made all of these investments. Now we're going to centralize it all into one fund that I have a partner, Cynosure, this very good firm in Salt Lake City that is owned by the Eccles. And the Eccles were the ones that helped me keep the Jazz in Salt Lake a million years ago, long before you were born. And we were keeping the Jazz in Salt Lake City by borrowing $8 million from their bank, a loan that should have never been done.
Yeah.
They found a way to do it, and that's why the Jazz are there. So I have this long-time relationship, enormous respect and trust for that family, and I'm really honored, frankly, that they're my partner, because in their firm, they've got, all of the compliance and financial wherewithal to kind of guide these investments and to do a lot of the back office work. And I will, I'll be out sourcing the deals and raising the money alongside of them. And it's going to be great. I couldn't be happier.
That's awesome. And from a thesis standpoint, if you can clarify that for everyone too, from growth, is it teams, leagues, tech, where you guys where's your sweet spots?
So I think that you'll see us investing in significant amounts of money in kind of the minority positions in teams and the establishment of leagues. There's a lot of startup leagues now, and there's some really interesting things like the TGL, and I like that. I like women's sports. I launched the Liberty while I was at the Garden in the WNBA. The WNBA has gotten so much stronger. The National Women's Soccer League is an interesting investment, unrivaled, the 3-on-3 tournament. There's a number of things and leagues where we'll invest, but I don't expect in most of those that we will be the control investor. I think that we'll what we bring to the table is all of these years of experience, and especially in turning bad teams into good teams and turning losing teams into winning teams. That's what we've done. That's what I've done my whole career. So when someone's buying in and they want somebody along with experience, we'll invest. We'll help them change their culture. We'll help them put the right people in place to win. And, that's what we'll do. So I think most of it will be in the U.S., but I think a lot of it will be in Europe.
Interesting. I just had a different podcast with an early stage sports VC, and they were talking about they're trying to figure out where your living side of space, because it impacts them a lot. If team valuations, where they go in, is it continue to go up? Are they overvalued? If they go down, what happens? And I'm just curious, from where you're sitting, and you've been doing this a while, and you've seen valuations fluctuate, and you've been pretty stamped in across all, we'll just call it the major four, US and international, where you see it at, right? Like, as you look into the teams, as you look into the private equity firms and groups like yourselves coming in, like, what is the state of it? What does it look like? Where valuations stand? Like, how do you view it, just seeing this progression, even of the NBA from 84 to 2025?
It's a great question, Andrew. I mean, there are billions and billions of dollars going into private equity, and private equity is always looking for spaces where, they can invest in assets that continue to appreciate in value. That's a little tougher on the venture side of things. Will the volleyball startup, the women's volleyball leagues, will they actually ever turn into a money-making opportunity?
Yeah, all three of them.
Yeah.
Crazy. And they all raised 100 million plus.
I know. It feels to me like they need to come together and put this, put all of the talent and all of the juice behind one league and make it work. But in order for that to happen, a couple of them will have to start failing, before they hook onto the lifeboat, if one of them is succeeding. And that's happened in basketball. It's happened in football. It's exactly the way it's unfolded. I don't want to be a part of that aspect of this. I'd like them to take care of all of that business before it becomes a very investable asset. So I think where we will be is we'll buy what private equity has done, for instance, in the NBA and even the NFL. It helps these owners whose teams have changed in value dramatically by letting them take some money off the table, whether it's for their family, whether they want to buy another house in Spain, whatever it is they want to buy. Or is it to pay their taxes for their children when the wealth switches? Whatever they need money for. These guys that have bought teams for 200 million, 300 million, and now they own teams that are worth 6 and 7 billion. Not a big deal to take 500 million off the table through private equity. And in order to do that, and on the private equity side, you just have to believe that, number one, you're not going to have to feed the beast. These teams are generating cash flow. Number two, these teams will continue to escalate in value. When the Celtics sell for $6.1 billion, if you don't believe that every owner in the NBA is looking at his financial statement and saying, well, what does that make the Oklahoma City Thunder worth? I don't know. But I know it's worth more than it was.
Yes.
And so these guys get a chance to take some money off the table. And for private equity, most of those people that invest in private equity funds are not necessarily the same people who would have $6 billion to spend on the Celtics. So it gives them kind of some of the thrills of sports ownership. They take the stock certificates and put them on their wall of their office. And they introduce themselves as, I'm one of the owners of the Golden State Warriors. They love that, right?
Yeah.
But for me, it's a chance to invest, to raise enough money to truly play a role in a franchise, not necessarily an owner, but as an advisor, as a director. That's what I do in England. And we're headed over there tomorrow.
Nice.
And hopefully my team there can win the championship. We've already...
You Burnley?
Yeah, we've earned promotion. Now we want to win the league. And that'll happen. Both teams play the final day on May 3rd. So
you think that, and I know you're on the MLS side, I mean, I've never experienced it, but there's probably nothing like promotion and relegation, right? Like that's a whole nother, like it feels like such an American concept too, but it's not. None of our leagues have it. I think they need to put it into college football. I think that's the first test spot. But
No, that's been written a couple of times. I got interviewed for a New York Times article on that very subject. And I said, until you've been relegated, man, you don't understand. I mean, our first year in the Premier League after we bought the club, it came down right to the last day, Andrew. The last day, there were 3 teams, and only one of them was going down. 2 had already been relegated. But of these 3 teams were tied. We're going to play the very same time. And the television networks are going back and forth to the game saying, well, right now they're being relegated. There's a goal now, right? Now they're being relegated. You know, 3 teams down there. It turned out that we were the other 2 teams tied and we lost. So it's 1 point. It's 1 point separating us. And people, we lost at home. People stayed in the stadium for hours and hours and hours, sobbing. They stayed there and cried. I mean, I don't mean to make fun of it at all, but it's their religion. And the fact that the team was going down, they were just devastated. So now we're going back up. Everybody's celebrating. It'll be a fun time to be in beautiful Burnley.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah.
That'll be awesome. And going back to your previous, I wanted to bring up 2 points. When you talked about leagues merging and all that, there's a great book that it's not the most well written, but it's a good book for anyone in sports. It's called, it's by Dennis Murphy. He started the ABA, then he started, I think, the WHO, and it's all around like creating these arbitrage opportunities to build emerging leagues to ultimately force them to merge with the clear winner. And so anyway, there's a lot of interesting parallels happening today that were happening in the 80s when he was doing those things.
And what's the name of the book?
It's called Murph, the Sports Entrepreneur Man and His Leagues.
Oh, wow. That sounds
Anyway, I don't know if you heard of that. I thought you might even know him. But anyway,
that's an interesting subject to me because, you know, if you look at the history of the NBA and when they merged with the ABA, I was in Utah. I grew up in Utah. My team was the Utah Stars that won the ABA championship. And we like all flooded onto the floor. It was a gigantic celebration. But only 4 teams from the ABA made it to the NBA. The rest were just financially not able to go, and I was devastated.
Which is crazy because today there's probably so many markets that could withstand them.
They were ABA markets and then had a chance to come in. Still no Kentucky Colonels in the NBA, though.
We need a Pittsburgh team, man. That's where I grew up, and it's the one spot I was always like, we sort of have baseball, but we have hockey's been good and football's been good. And so
football's been outstanding. Hockey's been really good. The baseball team has struggled a little bit, although, you know, they've had some nice young teams. They just don't. It's hard to have the kind of Yankee payroll in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Well, the big, I don't want to say joke. We'll say more conspiracy theory, which probably has some tint of truth to it, is that the Pirate, you know, how you have the minor league teams where you develop players to send them to the major leagues. Well, because of the no salary cap in MLB, the Pirates ownership has deals with the top teams, the Mets, the Dodgers, the Yankees, of, hey, we'll bring in the top prospects, trade them to us. We'll develop them against MLB players, and then we'll, you know, ship them off like a Paul Skeens in a couple years. And so I'm like, you know what? There's probably some truth to it. And, you know, I guess nothing wrong with it other than my hometown baseball team stinks. So, anyway, I live in St. Petersburg now. Actually, Tropicana's right here. And what a mess that is, too. I can literally see it from right here. The whole roof is just blown off.
Playing in George Steinbrenner Field. I can't believe that. But I've met some of the owners from down there, and you know what? They're really devoted to the whole idea of the Rays and competing with the big leagues, competing with the big teams by just being smarter. It's hard to do.
Yes, it's analytics or torpedo bats or whatever these days.
Whatever works.
Right. Is there anything that worries you, Dave, about sports? Like, I think we all talk about how great it is, right? You're going to go deploy a bunch more capital into it. A lot of exciting things taking place just across the space. Is there anything where you sort of go, okay, I've seen cycles, I've seen things, like anything that worries you about it at all? Or, you just think you're evaluating closer?
I love college sports. I
Mm.
always have. I played in college at BYU. Look, this whole NIL transfer portal thing has to come to some sort of negotiated halt. And I think that will happen when private equity or major investment comes in. The idea of a super conference with maybe 30 schools, the idea that a super conference then has relegation among the colleges, it's all interesting. But the guys who are looking to invest in that space are also saying, we got to try to collectively bargain. Basically, you got to go to school. In fact, you got to graduate. We're going to pay you to play for Rutgers, but you got to go all 4 years.
Yeah.
I don't, so a kid comes in, has a great freshman year, really world-class sophomore year, and he says, then he gets bought out by a pro team who's dying to draft him, and he says, I'll go. I don't know how long that process will take, and I don't know, Andrew, this is the biggest thing. I don't know if we can keep the spirit of college sports alive when that comes roaring in here. And these guys can you imagine, the guys are driving Ferraris on the campus and they've actually lawfully getting paid millions and millions of dollars for playing for their college team. I don't know how all that turns out, but it feels like it's a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah. There's definitely some delicacy around it for sure. Any other emerging areas that interest you, or are you sticking like women's sports, more traditional, soccer, basketball, football, baseball? Or
there's, in terms of emerging areas, I'll tell you an area that's been disrupted in incredible ways, and that's sports television. So, you've got your regional sports networks that are going down fast, cord cutting happening left and right, everybody getting out of owning cable or owning satellite. Those days seem to be over. Although there's still a strong number of people in the country that keep those things because streaming is frustrating. Sometimes if you wait to turn your television on just when the game's starting and you can't get on, for one reason or another, the internet, whatever it is, not nearly as reliable as having a cable running to your house and getting that K television picture on your screen. That's what people want. So I don't know how long this takes, but I think it's going to change things dramatically. I think there'll be opportunities for us. ESPN is going to start delivering to customers directly now. That's just going to change the world and how everything works. So I love that space. When I was at MSG as CEO, I oversaw the MSG network when it was truly the MSG network. We had Yankees, Mets, Knicks, Nets. We had all 3 hockey clubs. We had the shoulder programming for the Jets and Giants. I mean, you talk about a regional sports network. It was 8 million subscribers that were paying us probably at the height around $7 a month. We were making like a fortune. So what happens next? And how are you going to get your sports television? And what role does fantasy sports play here? It's an industry that is gigantic now.
It is.
And loads of opportunities for entrepreneurs and investors to do interesting things.
Does the technology side, I know you said the TV, but like are you sticking more towards, I'm just going to call it the IP side, Dave? Or are you going to go into some of the technologies like the betting or gambling, like the wearables or whatever it is in and around sports?
No.
That's
not something we're primed for. I think those things are startup, and that is a risk profile that is not our investor. They'd rather invest in a team that has value, and they believe that value is going to continue to increase. The NBA signed a contract that is 11 years for $78 billion. Now, I'm old enough to remember, Andrew, when with David Stern, we negotiated a new 4-year deal that I think was about I think it gave each team about $2 million a year. And we were thinking we just died and gone to heaven.
Yeah. The players were still working 2 jobs, and now
Well,
you're probably look at it like, holy, what is that for you? That perspective of like that 2 million to these billions, from players making $1 million a year to 70 million. Is that pretty wild? Like, to be like, holy cow, this came so far.
it is. And I worry about that. There's a lot of things that I loved about the NBA of the 90s and 90s that doesn't exist now.
Yeah.
But you're seeing a little bit of a rebirth in these playoffs, some physical play, really tough physical play, some rivalries. I don't think the Houston guys and the Golden State guys like each other very much.
No.
And so that is interesting to watch. And at the end of the season, the trades, the Luka trade to the Lakers,
Nuts.
completely surprised everybody. There was no indication that was coming. Now the Dallas fans turned into like angry mobs. That was very serious stuff, that it set them off. It was much more English-like in the Premier League. I mean, where they'll tear the stadium down. So, but between that and Jimmy Hunter in bad circumstances in Miami, goes to Golden State. And I'm telling you, he gave that team so much energy and toughness that I don't know who ends up beating them. But it looks like they're going to get out of this series with a really good young Houston team. So look, I think there's good things happening, but how players handle these enormous paychecks and what it does to their head, and whether they're still going to retain their competitive fire on a night-to-night basis. And I'm talking mostly about the NBA, but it's happening across all sports.
Of course. Yeah, I'm with you. And this has been great, Dave. Well, where can people, like, you guys have a website set up, or you guys just all like, you have enough of the network and referral base now, and now you're just keeping everything sort of tight?
No, all we've got is a landing page, and we're just getting that up now. All of the documents, all of the registrations, that's all got to be done. But we announced it because it was a great way to let people know what we're going to do. And we're already getting offered now on a daily basis.
Sure. That's awesome.
My deal flow file is growing by the moment. So
that's amazing.
Excited about the future, Andrew, and appreciate the chance to discuss it with you.
Of course.